Thank you, Andrew. It's a privilege to be here this afternoon. Quite flattering, actually, to be perfectly honest, that what we appear to be doing in Plymouth gets recognition across such a wide and vast region. Hopefully, you're all very comfortable now, you've all had lots to eat, and we will keep you entertained for at least the next 20 minutes. I'm sure we'll be entertained for the rest of the afternoon as well. But we just want to flick through a load of stuff that we've been up to thus far and tell you a bit more about what Building Plymouth is all about. Okay, so I'm alleged that the green button kicks things off. Okay, oh yeah, there we are then. So I'm Ed, and Emma's in front seat there. I line manage Emma, technically, because technically she is a local authority employee, but I stress here and now, she is a partnership employee as well. And these fabulous organisations are our partners. They are our sponsors. They are also the businesses through which we owe a great deal for getting Building Plymouth up and running. They are sponsors. Not only are they sponsors, they give cash. Yeah. And it's a fantastic model, we think, that goes forward to show how this can actually work. It's early days, but what we do know and recognise is that the enthusiasm to which has been taken to this and the need for it over a long period of time is now actually starting to be addressed. So, if anything, we're kind of like on the same ship, so as to speak, with Plymouth being near the sea and all the rest of it. So once again, to all of our sponsors thus far, we thank you. And there's always room for more, ladies and gentlemen, always room for more. Okay, so what is Building Plymouth? It's basically a partnership created to primarily address skills and talent demand and supply in Plymouth, sort of like at the moment, but it's the wider sub-region as well, and I'll just explain a bit more about that later. One of the key things, and it started to come out again this morning, is around raising the profile of the sector. The real issue around this, it's not all about builder's bum and that kind of thing. It is far wider than that, as some of the presentations alluded to this morning. We want to encourage new entrants. We want to help and support existing employers around finding their way around the myriad of connections that had to be made around engaging with schools and engaging with people, both not only young people but also adults. And the key thing as well around this is actually ensuring that the skills provider base actually matches the demand. It's something that I'm particularly interested with this. I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. And the other side of this is actually ensuring that we have a pipeline of projects to which we can match our people, and not only in the here and now, but also in the longer term. Plymouth has an aspiration to be a 300,000 population city. That's pretty ambitious. It needs people in order to work there. It needs skilled people. We have a very rich infrastructure in Plymouth, despite the fact that it's almost on the toe end of England. So we have needs, the same as the rest of the Southwest does. And another thing about it is looking at how we can blend national programmes with local delivery as well. I think none of these are new to you all, but this is how we're doing it in Plymouth. Okay, so headlines in terms of demand. This map here, and there, shows you roughly where the sort of like overall growth in terms of projects and building activity is going to take forward. Just as an aside, it's construction and the built environment. Okay, we're very mindful that it encompasses all of this. So there's an awful lot going on in Plymouth, as I guess you well know through your own networks. and there's plenty of opportunity. 10,000 jobs in the next 10 years, that's actually not political rhetoric. There is a reasonable amount of fact to that. Sherford as well, which is a village in its own right, a new village, over the next 10 to 15 years. And then, of course, we have the churn that is created from employees, skilled staff moving from one job to the other, and the magnet that is created by absolutely huge superstructure projects such as Hinckley and also up towards Bristol as well. So there's a lot there. There's a lot of opportunity. Okay, so what do we need? When we started off on this last year, it's kind of like handed over the reins to myself with one of my colleagues, and we need a delivery plan. How are we going to start going about this? We have that. Two purposes. One, it provides structure. The other thing is, in terms of funding, potential funding that we might go for, it also acts as a delivery plan. A business plan. So, hopefully that's a win-win situation. But it's also something that the Building Plymouth Skills Coordinator, i.e. Emma, is able to pay not only heed to, but also ensure that a lot of the activity there is actually delivered as a consequence. We have the need for a marketing and communication plan as well, and we'll speak more about that. And at the present moment in time, we are very fortunate, in big capital letters again, that we have 16 project sponsors who believe in what we're doing and the general direction of travel that it is going. I'm a bit of a data geek in terms of things around apprenticeship starts, forecasts and things like that, and also what the actual labour market is actually telling the provider base about what it actually needs. So we've done an awful lot of work around that in Plymouth. We've done a wider Plymouth skills analysis, for example, which is a tome of about 90 odd slides, which basically says a mark in time about where things are, and also to start influencing curriculum not only within the FE and also skills provider base, but maybe even looking at schools and also university as well. So, and we also need a structure and a governance thing, which we are working through at the moment as part and parcel of that. We have a smaller working group, which we treat as an advisory group at the moment, and our partners are down there, and they helped me recruit Emma for Building Plymouth. So it is our Building Plymouth. It's not, there's no eyes in this. Okay, so what we want to do this year, we want to become a national example of good practice. I can't stress highly enough the value of partnership with a capital P. I'm used to that work where I'm from, and we need to get with that. It's there, just needs cementing a little further. And it will happen, it will happen. So what does Building Plymouth offer? What is the offer? What is that thing that Building Plymouth wants to offer to all, both as employers, as young people, as parents, carers, and we're looking at that too. Governance I've mentioned. We need some kind of, I think, some kind of like employer groupage, I've called it there, but it's basically sort of like a sounding board for things that are good, things aren't so good, and things that need really some serious rectification, or changing, just changing, amending. What we do have, though, is a direct link into our local Employment and Skills Board, which is chaired by Steve Cardew from Kawasaki, who's very keen to basically have this as a movement, as an initiative going forward for the benefit of Plymouth. Operationally, supply and demand, where the gaps are, and looking at how we rectify that. Understand apprenticeship reform and translate the message, yes. We are doing a lot about that, but it's hard at the moment because clearly not all the legislation is not there, and the policies coming along in kind of like big sort of like lumps, which require an awful lot of interpretation. And clearly what we don't want to do is look to to not necessarily upset people, but alleviate people's concerns as part of that. And as I mentioned before, a new labour market information tool, which we've got and we're playing around with, and it's really useful. It actually starts to pick out vacancies in terms of actual skills, which then we can then use to go back to our provider base and say these are the things that actually are offered. And then we can start having that discussion about, well, actually, Ed, the funding doesn't mix what we're actually after, so we need to have that discussion as well. That's me. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed. As Ed's explained, we do have 16 project sponsors, and we've got a growing network of partners who are really kind of ramping up and enabling us to drive this forward. But in terms of full-time resource for Building Plymouth, you're looking at her. So I am full-time. I work on behalf of the partners, very much driven on what the sponsors are looking for from Building Plymouth. And these are the kind of key drivers for my role. So all the activities I do day to day, fit within one of these drivers. So it's about increasing that local availability of skills. So as employers, you start seeing an increase in the quality and the quantity of applications coming in, whether that's apprenticeships or jobs. Very much looking to connect local people with employers. I'm not so worried about the people actually in terms of my travels over the last 7 months. They're there, but they can't find a way in, and many of them have got no idea about the pathways, the qualifications they need, the experience, and who you are as employers. So a good part of my job to date has been looking at and working with individuals and trying to make the connections for them. And finally, probably one of the trickiest ones, and it's been talked about quite a lot this morning, is about improving this longer-term image of the sector and also making sure that we raise awareness of the opportunities within that. So I hope that gives you a sense of kind of my role and what I'm looking to do day to day. And I'm just going to talk through a few examples of some of the things that we've been doing. Ed mentioned the delivery plan. So within that, we've got 10 key areas of priority, and we're kind of pushing on all fronts. Some things have happened and some things are still in progress. But essentially developing the structure, so the whole governance. But one of my key drivers is to expand the membership of the network, because the more employers I'm connected with, the more chance I've got of getting some of the local people into jobs. So that's one of the big drivers for us. It's really important that we monitor and evaluate, obviously, our journey on Building Plymouth and get some baselines into place and start capturing that as output. So again, that's the more difficult part of this, to be honest with you, because some of the outcomes I don't see, because it kind of goes into a process that sometimes I don't get feedback on. However, we will be looking at that. One of the first challenges I was set when I first joined, was to write a bid on behalf of Plymouth City Council for us to become a National Skills Academy for construction in our own right, and therefore formally adopt the client-based approach. Many of you will be aware of client-based approach in the room. So I've been working really closely with CITB, great support to enable our application to go through. And so now I'm really pleased to say that as a local authority, we are contracted to run the client-based approach for both planning and procurement of construction projects, which means it's not a nice thing in a city now to do some employment and skills stuff. If you are awarded contracts through the council, there is an expectation you will be adhering to an employment and skills plan. And it's not as scary as perhaps it might sound, because I'm there with you, and part of my role is to help you hit and exceed your targets. So that's a really exciting step forward, I think, to make sure that we exploit those skills and employment opportunities through all the construction activity that's happening in the city that Ed's alluded to earlier. When I first joined, I also put into place a marketing and communications plan. So very much looking at our target audience. Who is it we're trying to influence through Building Plymouth? And we've touched again on this a lot this morning. But children, young people are clearly one of our areas of focus. But also the parents, because parents are key influencers on career decisions, and there's a lot more work we need to do to raise their awareness of this fantastic sector as well. There's also a big agenda on schools. Again, we talked about this earlier today. And how do we get head teachers, the few career advisors there are in place, heads of sixth form, etc., waking up that this sector isn't just about bricklayers and perhaps people they don't know quite what to do with, and they'll put them in a vocational box somewhere and hope they get on okay. There's a whole lot of work to do around that. There's also the adult agenda, And again, we've touched on this morning. So we've been doing work with military, sort of service leavers, either prematurely or naturally leaving. So there's some momentum there now. We've got some case studies where some of our sponsors have actually taken on some military people through Building Plymouth, doing lots of work with Job Centre Plus. Back in March, they had their Campaign in a Box month focused on construction, timed really well with National Apprenticeship Week. Did loads of activities in the job centre, fairs outside there as well. And again, that's a really important agenda for us to make sure that job seekers can find a way into the sector and we can help those people back in the game. And then the final part is obviously the small to medium-sized enterprises. Again, we touched on this morning, and supply chain, to make sure that they don't just see the logos of the Kias and the Midas of the world and think, oh, that Building Plymouth's nothing to do with us. Actually, Building Plymouth encompasses anybody who's in the construction and the built environment sector right across the piece. So I just want to make that kind of really clear. In terms of the infrastructure, now we've got our logo Building Plymouth. We've had loads of press coverage, like embarrassingly so, with my mugshot in lots of it, which is another story. But essentially, if someone touches Building Plymouth, what happens? If I'm a young person thinking about an apprenticeship, how do the partners help that young person find their way in? So again, this is me looking at how does Building Plymouth become a gateway to the sector in Plymouth? How do we match? How do we refer? How do we signpost? And my role is very impartial. So I've got no boxes to tick in terms of training providers, which way I can genuinely listen to that individual and what their ambitions are and look to encourage them and give them some options to consider. So again, this is an interesting point of the project, 7 months in. We've done loads of activity. I'm getting inquiries, I'm getting phone calls, email, CVs coming into me, and I'm now kind of trying to get them organised to make sense for employers. So really interesting part of our journey now. Going on to improving the image of the sector, raising awareness, there's a whole raft of things happening under this umbrella. And I think it's fair to say the first 7 months in post, we've done so much profile raising, trying to get the visibility up of Building Plymouth and the opportunities that it presents to local people. Really keen to push Go Construct. I know some CITB members of staff here in the audience, so we are very keen to champion Go Construct as the platform of where you direct people to get impartial advice and guidance about the sector. If you've not seen it, I urge you to have a look at it. Some great little video clips, case studies, and I think it's a fantastic tool to put in front of young people. So, and imminently, just as a bit of a plug while I'm there, in June there's going to be a new bit of functionality on there in terms of experiences. So we want you as employers to upload your work placement opportunities, your site visits, when you're able to go into schools and offer mock interviews. And this is a way we're going to get some connectivity through to the schools and the young people coming through the system. So big push on that. We're looking at case studies, construction ambassadors, to make sure we've got current apprentices going into schools and being proactive and saying the right things to influence those young people going forward. And I think another really important part of this is the schools themselves. And just to give you a bit of an example, I've had some conversations with the Atrium Studio School, who you'll hear from after this slot. And it's a no-brainer. Ashburton's just up the road from Plymouth. We've got so many fantastic sort of consultancy architect practices in Plymouth that it's a no-brainer to look at that school as a feeder for future employees of the City of Plymouth. So we are actively working with the team to get work placements set up for this October and going into next year. And as the learner numbers increase, I'm hoping as a city we can take as many of those students, those young people into the city, expose them to the real world of industry and get them enthused for taking forward their careers. So our intent with the local schools, secondary schools, is what I'm targeting to start with. I will work back to primary when I catch up, but obviously there's a lot of work to do on the older age group at the moment. And formalising plans with those schools and getting away from this on the phone. Emma, on Monday, do you think you can come and do a careers talk? Well, no, actually. It's not the way this needs to work. We need to be really clear on the year groups, the type of school it is, and make sure that we are talking about the breadth of the sector using Go Construct right from word go. So they don't look at construction, they don't just see building sites, and they don't just see becoming an aspire to be a bricklayer or a plasterer, etc. We need those trades, but as we all know in the room today, it's much wider than that. And I must sort of comment on a meeting I attended earlier this week down at the Royal William Yard. There's quite a concentration of professional practices, architects, etc. down there, and we had very welcome discussion about that end of the sector and the need for higher technical apprenticeship routes in as an alternative to university, and how we can actually work together as a city to draw awareness to the BIM agenda, the whole digital world of construction, so the educators become educated on what these young people could possibly come out and achieve with their careers, and they start thinking about their curriculum and how they inform it, because not everyone's a studio school who are embracing all of this sector for us. So I think there's a lot of work we can do collectively as a city to raise our game and get in very early with the young people. There's great work going on, Constructing Excellence with their Adopt a School programme. Really want to piggyback and make sure Building Plymouth plays a very big role in working collectively there. And SWIC, the Southwest Women in Construction, very active. CITB have got their ambassadors. But how does it get drawn together in a way that makes sense for those young people coming through the system? And what I fear is that we don't have the reinforcement and the right reinforcement at the right time, and having meaningful engagement so these young people get exposed and enthused and excited about what they could do. So there's a whole piece, and I've actually spent quite a lot of my time to date on this agenda, and there's much more to do. Increase apprenticeship starts. Ed mentioned this. As a city, as a local authority, the intent is a 25% uplift of apprenticeships. And I get the sense that construction is going to be targeted with a fair proportion of that growth in line with the national drive. This is great. So we're looking at progression routes. Why aren't people progressing from levels 2 to 3? Where's the higher end for this sector? It doesn't really exist. So what do we need to be doing to enable that to happen? What about adults that want to retrain, and how does the apprenticeship model work? Doesn't work for them. So there's a whole piece of work that we're trying to unpack there with exciting possibilities. So really welcome your views on that going forward. Upskilling the existing workforce. Again, we've touched on this today. A really important part of this, we push people through the system and we make sure that we build on the existing potential of people to make way for others coming through the system. So training plans, qualifications, moving people properly into management leadership positions, etc. Working with the unemployed and those wishing to retrain, I've touched on, and I spend quite a bit of my time on this at the moment, working with all sorts of partners. One of the initiatives we're supporting at the moment is with the Prince's Trust. They have a Get Into Construction programme live at the moment. There's a cohort of 15 young adults who have expressed interest in construction, and they're going through a training programme, and at the end of that, through Building Plymouth, we're establishing work placement, work trials with local employers. So I'm kind of rallying the troops on that front, and that's just an example of partnership work in there, and I think there's a lot more we can do going forward. Build capacity. This is an ongoing conversation, really. Ed talked about the kind of supply and demand forward planning, so we're informing the training providers about what they need to be getting themselves set up for. Building our network, there's more of us engaged with this activity, more of us working with schools and contributing that way. Looking at additional funding pots as well. If there's skill gaps, how could we as a collective actually work together on securing funding to help maybe some of these adults into apprenticeships if that's what we decide would be a good model. And sponsorship. As Ed's already commented, this wouldn't be possible without sponsorship. Since being in post, 2 new sponsors have joined Building Plymouth. We're very open to more people coming on board, because this makes this sustainable as a local authority and kind of going in a different direction, and also gives us a bit of pot of money then to start spending on marketing and everything else that we need to do. So I hope that just gives you a flavour of just, you know, the key drivers and some examples of where we have been and we are doing some work. And then I thought I'd just give you a few kind of tangible examples. So we now as a council have this national badge, which means I spend time now with our planning and procurement department, get the heads up on things that are coming through, and look to get in earlier with the developers and the contractors on employment and skills. So there's not this, oh God, we've got to do an employment and skills plan. It's about how we can work together and how I can get the pipeline of people coming through to marry up to hit those targets. So if I know there's targets for unemployed adults to get jobs or work experience, I'm talking to Job Centre Plus to say, we've got this development happening at this point in time, I'm going to need some work-ready people. Can we start looking at that and what that might look like? So I think over time, when we can map that pipeline and we can see a year, 18 months ahead, this is where Building Plymouth will really come into its own, and the outputs, the numbers will look very special. So I'm kind of involved in advising and monitoring this. So it's, again, it's not a case of, yeah, you've put that in writing, looks really good, go away and do it. I'm going to be intimately involved with those developments. So there's quarterly, 6-monthly reviews to make sure this stuff is happening and it's genuine, and we get case study, we get PR out of it that just keeps reinforcing the good messages of the sector. National Apprenticeship Week, many of you will know, happens mid-March, crazy mid-March, and we decided that we wanted to hold our very first construction and built environment apprenticeship jobs fair. The manufacturers do it really well in the city, so why not our sector? And thanks to project sponsors and partners, we came together for a fantastic day, actually, and we had about 130 people come through the doors. And when you think that's a sector-specific event, so everyone wanted to talk construction, it wasn't a general careers event, really pleased. Great support from lots of employers, colleges, training providers, and lots of those people have since been in touch with me, and I've seen them at various events. So it's reinforcing, it's trying to help those people through. So that was a really positive step forward, and we got loads of local publicity about this. I did lots of editorial pieces leading up to the event in the week about the sector, and again, not just talking about the trades, trying to illustrate the breadth of it. So that was exciting, and something we are going to expand on next year. And another important part of building credibility and improving this image, we feel, is about the award side. So why not acknowledge some of these young people coming through about their success and their achievements? And so we launched our Construction Apprentice of the Year award. And having a double-page spread covering an event that happened on a Saturday when a photographer and a reporter attended is good going. You don't usually get media interest in that way. So we presented these awards as part of our apprenticeship jobs fair, as you would expect, so it really gave weight to inspire some of those people that are thinking about going that way. We had our overall winner, Matthew Evans, there with a cup. He's doing bricklaying, and since he's won the award, he's like my little shadow at events. He follows me around. And it's great. He's really bought in and he wants to champion the sector. We had 2 other finalists, fantastic, strong finalists. We had Liam doing plastering, and we had Lizzie, who's actually undertaking a higher level apprenticeship with ACOM. And I was really pleased that got forward as a finalist because, again, it reinforced that this isn't just about the trades. And I think that was an important message that we wanted to convey. So really exciting day, great celebration, and these 3 individuals are pleased as punch to be recognised, and I think there's more we could do in recognising apprentice success. Skills Southwest, many of you will be aware of this. This is the largest regional careers event in the Southwest, and we're very lucky we've been hosting it in Plymouth for the last 2 years because Ed basically sponsors the event to make sure that it's held here as opposed to, Bristol, where it came from. It's a pretty expensive event to exhibit at, which means it puts a lot of employers off. And this is one of the ways of illustrating Building Plymouth and the value, is that through the partnership, people can just come on board. We had a double stand, which Building Plymouth paid for, but we had employers that came, stopped by to talk, promote their vacancies. CITB were there. These guys were the Doll's House. We had an electrical activity. They're from South Devon College, and they kind of had some kind of interactive session there with the young people coming through. So schools from all over the region are bussed into pavilions over 2 days, and I thought it was great that we could actually make a splash collectively as a sector. You can also see that we did some talks, some scheduled talks, which had never happened at this event before, so being cheeky, I asked if I could do some talks, and then I roped in, Sam's in the room somewhere, roped in some of the project sponsors to do a bit of a double act. And when we did those talks, very informally, we then got people to come over to our stand and talk to us more broadly about the sector. Held a 12-hour conference. That was interesting. 4 different audiences there, but all 4 really important for our agenda. Adults looking to get into construction, a really interesting afternoon. Over 50 adults came for some table discussions. Lots of employers came along to support and facilitate that. And we're working with those adults now to get them into jobs and work experience. All diverse. Some just come out of prison, some working with Shekinah, some been long-term unemployed, some military. Fantastic afternoon. And this is our kind of latest initiative. Some of you will be aware that SWH Civils are developing the new coach station development in Plymouth on Mayflower Street. And as a sponsor, they kindly have offered the front space as a job shop. So we now have a physical job shop in the city centre of Plymouth where I spend some of my time, and people can just drop in. Alongside that, we're also running events in there. So rather than me going to the jobs centre, which is a very uninspiring environment for everyone concerned, we're going to be inviting people here, which is actually part of a live, almost £5 million development. So it's actually a live construction site. So it really adds value and brings this stuff alive. We've got our first school trip booked in for the end of June, where we're going to show them around, show them the coach station development, hopefully go up to Beckley Court, which is going to be the tallest building in Plymouth, and again, get them inspired and enthused about the diverse roles within the sector. So this space, if anyone is based in Plymouth and want to do any activity in this space, please do talk to me. I'd be very happy to engage and support you. I could go on for hours and hours, but I can't. So those are our details. Ed and I would be really happy to hear from any of you. And a big thank you to our sponsors, particularly Andrew, for inviting us today to talk to you. Thank you very much.